I grabbed my shotgun when they started banging on my cabin door and yelling, "HOA police, come out now!" One of them shouted that my lake cabin was being seized and I had 5 minutes to leave. I stepped outside slowly and said, "You're standing on my land." The woman behind them, that HOA Karen, laughed loud and said, "This lake belongs to us now." My hands were shaking, not from fear but anger, because this cabin was the only thing I had left after my wife passed. She waved a paper in my face and said it was an emergency HOA order. I looked at it and knew something was wrong. No stamp, no county seal, just her signature at the bottom. Then she whispered, "If you don't listen, we'll make you disappear from here." That's when one fake cop reached for my door handle. I slowly lifted my shotgun, not pointing it, just holding it. Everything went silent. The men froze. Karen screamed, "Arrest him right now!" But instead of moving forward, they all took one step back, because they had no idea who they were really threatening. She thought I was a scared old man, but she had just touched the one place I would die protecting. Karen kept yelling, "Shoot him if he moves!" But the two men beside her didn't look brave anymore. One of them whispered, "This isn't what we were told." I took one slow step forward and said, "You see that lake behind me? I built this cabin with my own hands." She cut me off and said, "Your time here is over. The HOA owns everything past that tree line." Then she pointed toward my dock like it already belonged to her. I stayed quiet for a second, then asked, "If you own it, why does the county map say my name?" Her smile dropped for half a second, then came back even harder. "Maps can change," she said. That's when she pulled out her phone and started recording me. "This man is threatening officers with a weapon," she shouted loudly. One of the fake cops nodded and said, "Sir, put it down or we'll arrest you." My jaw tightened, because that same man was wearing a badge I recognized, a badge number that stopped being used 8 years ago. I looked straight at him and said softly, "You're not law enforcement." His face went pale. Karen didn't notice. She was too busy yelling at her phone, acting like a hero. Then she said the words that made my blood boil. "After today, this cabin gets locked, and your stuff goes into storage." I glanced behind me, toward the framed flag inside the window, folded perfectly, given to me at a military funeral. And I knew then, this was about to turn ugly. She thought a fake badge could scare me, but I'd faced real ones under fire. Karen suddenly snapped her fingers and said, "Do it now." One of the men rushed past me while the other kept yelling, "Hands where I can see them!" Before I could react, they pushed my cabin door open and stepped inside. I shouted, "That's illegal!" But Karen smiled and said, "HOA emergency rules. We can enter for safety." Then I heard a crash. My chair fell. A box hit the floor. My chest tightened when I saw them pulling my late wife's photo frame off the wall. I stepped forward without thinking. Karen screamed, "He's charging!" And one of them grabbed my arm and twisted it hard. Pain shot up my shoulder. "Stop resisting," he yelled, even though I wasn't fighting. Karen lifted her phone closer to my face and whispered, "No one will believe you." Then she pointed at my truck outside and said, "Tow it." 10 minutes later, a tow truck rolled in like it had been waiting all along. They hooked my truck right in front of me. That truck was how I got food, medicine, everything. I shouted, "That's my only ride." She shrugged and said, "Should have followed HOA rules." As the truck disappeared down the road, she leaned close and smiled. "You'll leave tonight, or we'll come back with real charges." I looked down at my wrist where the man's fingers had left red marks. That's when I noticed something else, a small body camera blinking on his chest. But the light was fake, plastic. My stomach turned, because now I knew for sure this wasn't enforcement. This was a setup. They didn't just cross a line, they erased it completely. When they finally left, the place felt too quiet. The lake didn't move. The wind didn't make a sound. I closed the door and sat down slowly, my arm still burning. That's when I reached under the table and pulled out my old phone. I hadn't used it in months. One message was already there. "Missed call, county office." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I pressed call back. The man who answered didn't say hello. He said my full name. That's when my heart skipped. He told me, "We got an alert from your perimeter camera." I looked toward the small sensor, hidden near the dock. Karen never saw it. I said, "They came with fake badges." He went quiet for 2 seconds, then said, "Stay where you are." Before the call ended, he added something that made my hands stop shaking. "Sir, that land dispute? It was never HOA land." I walked to the drawer and pulled out a folder I hadn't opened since the funeral. Inside was the original lake deed, signed 20 years ago. My name, my wife's name, and a county seal that could not be faked. I suddenly understood why Karen wanted me gone so badly. That new luxury housing across the water, every single cabin depended on my shoreline access. Without it, they were worthless. I looked out at the lake again and whispered, "So that's why." My phone buzzed once more. A new message came in. "Do not confront them again. We are sending someone." I exhaled slowly. Karen thought she had chased a lonely man into the dark. She had no idea. The system she was pretending to control was already moving against her. She tried to erase my rights, not knowing they were written in permanent ink. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside made me sit up. Just before sunrise, headlights flashed across the cabin wall. My stomach dropped. I stepped outside and saw 2 trucks blocking the dirt road. Karen was back. This time she looked proud. "Morning," she said. "You had all night to pack." I told her the county was already involved. She laughed and said, "You really think anyone cares about an old man by a lake?" Then she handed me a paper and said, "Final eviction." I looked down and saw my wife's name crossed out with a pen. That broke something inside me. I said, "You don't touch her name." She smirked and nodded toward the trucks. Men jumped out and started chaining my dock. One of them kicked over the small memorial stone near the water. I rushed forward and shouted, "Stop!" Karen yelled, "He's aggressive again!" Then she did the worst thing. She pointed at my cabin and said, "Cut the power." The lights went out instantly. My fridge went silent. My oxygen machine inside beeped once, then died. I froze. She didn't know. Or maybe she didn't care. I ran inside and grabbed the backup tank just in time. When I came back out, she was already recording. "See? He's unstable." My vision blurred from anger. That's when I heard a different engine sound, coming from behind the trees. Slow, heavy, official. Karen turned around, and for the first time, her smile slipped completely. She thought she had broken me. But she had just triggered the wrong system. The black SUV rolled closer and stopped right between Karen and my cabin. The door opened slow. A man stepped out wearing a county badge I knew was real. Then another. Then a third. None of them looked at me first. They all looked at her. Karen quickly lifted her phone and said, "Thank God you're here. This man has been threatening. HOA officers all." "Morning," the county officer didn't reply. He asked her one simple question. "Ma'am, who authorized you to seize this property?" She proudly handed him her papers. He studied them for 5 seconds, then folded them in half. "These are fake," he said calmly. Her face went red. "That's impossible. I'm the HOA president." He nodded. "And this land is not under your HOA." One of the fake cops tried to step back quietly, but another officer stopped him. "Badge," he said. The man hesitated. That hesitation said everything. Karen started shouting again, talking fast now. "They trespassed first. He aimed a gun!" The officer finally turned to me and said, "Sir, is that true?" I lifted my arm slowly and showed the red bruises. Then I pointed toward the dock camera. "Everything is recorded." Silence fell. The officer looked back at Karen and said, "You ordered an illegal eviction, impersonated law enforcement, and shut off medical equipment." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The men who came with her were already being separated. One was shaking. Karen suddenly whispered, "We can fix this." That's when the officer said the words she never expected. "Ma'am, you're not in charge anymore." Power feels real. Until the real power shows up. Karen started crying loud, real loud, like someone had flipped a switch. She said it was all a misunderstanding and pointed at the men beside her. "They told me it was legal," she shouted. One of them immediately said, "She paid us." The words hung in the air. The county officer raised his eyebrow and asked, "Paid you for what?" The man looked at Karen again and said, "To scare him out so the lake access could be sold." Her knees went weak. People from nearby cabins had started coming out, phones already up. Someone whispered her name. Another said, "That's the HOA lady." The officer read her rights slowly while she kept saying, "You can't do this to me." When the cuffs clicked, the lake went quiet again. One of the officers walked over to me and said softly, "Your wife's deed saved everything." I looked at the water and nodded. As Karen was led away, she turned and screamed, "This isn't over!" I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "It is for me." The tow company was ordered to bring my truck back. The chains on my dock were cut. The power came on. When my cabin lights lit up again, people clapped without even thinking about it. Karen lowered her head for the first time. She tried to take my home and lost her freedom instead. The sun was going down when everything finally settled. The lake reflected the orange sky like nothing had ever happened. I sat on the steps of my cabin holding the folded flag my wife was given years ago. One of the officers walked over and said, "You protected your home the right way." I told him I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. My truck rolled back in slowly, dusty but safe. The engine sound felt like relief. As the officers left, one of them stopped and saluted me quietly. I didn't expect that. I looked at the cabin, the dock, the water, all still mine. Not because I shouted the loudest, but because the law still mattered. Karen thought power came from yelling, papers, and fear. She was wrong. Real power came from truth and standing your ground when it counts. I placed the flag back inside and whispered, "We're still home." The lake stayed calm. And for the first time in a long while, so did I. I didn't protect this land with anger. I protected it with honor.